There you guys are.
Hi.
That's a different number than you guys gave me originally.
I'm sorry.
I was logged in waiting.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
So
You
this
guys can
is,
hear this okay?
yes. Everyone can hear good? All right. This is Professor William Stevenson. Very
Hi,
excited
everybody.
for all the advice that you're going to give us today.
You guys ready? We'll do, actually, I don't know if Wei needs to listen to this. Hears me too much as it is, I think. Let's see. I'm gonna do this. Oh, you know what? Somebody needs to pass me the football so I can share my screen. I'm not the host.
Let me. All right, how's that?
Thank you.
Awesome.
You guys see that okay, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna go through this. This is knocked down significantly from like a 2-hour, 4-hour presentation. So, and again, you've already seen all this. So. I don't know if you want to see it again, but here we go. So, oh yeah, I gotta be on that. All right. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about money, and in particular, I want to focus on budgeting as the main thing. So we're going to talk about the two sides of budgeting, and then how to be smart with your money. So let me talk first about the value of money for those of you who were not around in 1979. I'm just letting you know that the value of money changes over time due to this thing called inflation. This is the general price changes with money over time. Things cost more now than they used to. They will cost more in the future than they do now. And so the buying power of money changes over a relatively short period of time. So I'm going to take you back to 1979 and just show you, because I don't lie, this is actually a couple of ads for cars. And back in 1979, you could actually buy a car for around $4,500 or so. Just so you know, that's 40 years ago. And so back in 1979, these were the prices of things on average. And as I said, you can get a new car for about $5,000. A house, the average house in the United States was $68,000. Gallon of gas was under $1, so on. These are the prices as of last year. You can see how they've grown significantly. New houses now are closing in on 400,000. A new car's averaging closer to 37,000. Movie tickets now, and this is across the country, so it's an average. Obviously, here in California, many of these things are even more expensive. This is not the scary part. So the scary part is, where will this be when you are my age, right? 40 years from now, when you're my age, this is how much stuff will cost. So you're going to be buying cars that'll be close to $100,000. A house will be over $1 million just to get into a house. And public education, public college is going to be extremely expensive. So obviously, when I talk about you guys becoming financially successful and becoming millionaires, which I will show you how to do that, it is incredibly important that you do, because you don't really have much of a choice, to be honest with you, going forward. Because when I talk about being a millionaire, I'm really saying financial security. So these two things to me are one and the same. If you didn't have any expenses at all for the rest of your life and you had $1 in your pocket, you'd have plenty of security, right? So millionaire is just kind of a shorthand. What I really mean is financial security. And the definition of that is having enough passive income to exceed your expenses. Once you have enough passive income in your life, you really don't have to work anymore. You've reached this nirvana of financial security, which is where I want you guys to get to. Sources of passive income can include investments in stocks and bonds, real estate. If you're going to get a pension from your job, or Social Security is also another form of passive income. All of these things, combined should total your passive income. And once you have enough of this to meet your expenses, you're pretty much done. You don't really need to work. So in order to get there, one of the things you have to do is have control over your money. And in my larger presentation, I talk about your relationship to money, which is something very important to know. It's a little more complicated. I'm going to give you the shorthand version of it is you're either a spender or a saver. It's a bit more shaded than that, but let's just use the simplified version. So one of the things you have to know is, like, what does money mean to you and how do you feel about it and all that? But more importantly, you have to control your money. And the only way to really do that is to pay attention to it and have a plan for it. And so the budget helps. So two sides to a budget. There's the income side and the expense side. On the expense side, you can break these down into both needs or wants. And a need is something that you have to have. A want is pretty much everything else. So if you think about transportation, do you need a car? Is that something that you have to have? Or are there alternatives to that? So you could see, even a car is just a want, right? You could take the bus, you could walk, you could find public transportation. Nowadays you could Uber, but it's not a requirement that you own a car. So you have to start thinking about everything that way. Is it a need or is it a want? Do I have to have it, or would I just like to have it? Because what happens if you spend all of your money just on your wants, then obviously you don't have enough left for your needs. And when you build your budget, one of the things we're going to talk about is you have to put your needs first. You have to make sure you're paying for those things first before, you fall into any of your wants. So the reason that we do that is because money is a very limited resource, and you have to spend it wisely on the things that you know are going to be coming up in your life. But I say if you want to spend it, save it, or give it away, all of these things should be in your budget. If it's important to you, then you need to put it in your budget. So what are some expenses we should include in our budget? The best way to really do this is to come up with a spending journal. Get in the habit of using a spending journal and just record for, say, 3 months, everything you've spent money on. Go to the grocery store, write it down. If you bought something out of a vending machine, put it down. Go out to dinner, if you buy clothing, if you go on vacation, if you're buying a computer, putting gas in your car or fixing your car, everything you spend money on, keep track of it for about 3 months. And it should really open your eyes to where your money goes, where it's going. But eventually you'll come up with a list of things that you could spend money on. This list here is of course very small. There's many, 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 many other things you could put on this list, but let's just say that this becomes your basic list of things that you could spend money on. So you just put these down in the form of the list. And then the next thing I want you to do is take that list and separate it into needs and wants. So my version of this, yours could be completely different. You might have different needs and you'd certainly have different wants, but my version of this would look something like this. Now, obviously, if you have credit cards or student loans or mortgages or any kind of loans for that matter, those are no longer wants. You have to pay those. And so they would slide over into needs. Try not to have those and you have more money, right? So try to live debt free. But just the basic needs here, just basic needs. This is to give you some rough idea of what things cost. A 1-bedroom apartment in Pomona right now, on average, costs about $1,400. The average person in our country spends $335 a month in food, $150 in utilities, $650 for transportation. That's car payments, insurance, maintenance, gas. Cars are really one of the most expensive things you can do. Insurance and so on. So this small list of just basic needs, I think, will run you about $3,000 a month. And that's not an insignificant amount of money. This is before you've paid for any wants, before you've gone to the gym, before you've paid credit cards or bought clothing or gone on vacation or bought furniture or anything fun basically, this is just basic needs, I would guess about $3,000 a month. Now, the real question is, what happens if you're only making $20,000 a year? You know, you can't have needs that cost $36,000 if you're only making $20,000 a year. Obviously, you'd run out of money very, very quickly. So my guess is if you were in a situation like that, you don't have a one-bedroom apartment in Pomona. You may still be living with your parents. You may be sharing an apartment with someone, but you certainly can't afford to have your own apartment, at least not in Pomona. You're probably not spending $650 a month on cars. Maybe you're buying a used car. Maybe, you know, it's a very reliable Camry or something that doesn't have a lot of maintenance. Maybe you don't drive as much, but you know, you have to find ways to live within your budget. And so this becomes the crunch, right? How do you know, though, until you have a budget? How do you really know where your money is going to go or how to plan for it if you're not thinking about your money, if you're not planning for it? So this is really where the budget comes in. So any questions on expenses before I move on? There's a lot more to it, but we're just going through a very brief overview here, obviously. So we'll go to the other half of the budget, which is the income side. And obviously there's many, many things we could do. You know, all of us are in college, right? Or I went to college a long time ago now, but you know, you go to college to really start a career, not have a job, but to start a career. And so there's lots of things we could do to fill our day and be productive. Here's a small list of potential jobs that you could have. And I'll tell you, if you just look at this list, the most or the highest paid on average, the highest paid position on this list is a physician, right? Physicians in this country make on average about $215,000 a year, which is a damn good income. The average household income in the United States is about $52,000 a year. So you can see physicians make about 4 times the national average. The lowest paid job, also the #1 job in America, more people actually have this title than any other, is the cashier. And cashiers on average make about 1/10 of what physicians make. And again, that's even under California minimum wage, and that's because obviously there's other states that have lower wages. So if I take the list and separate it high to low from physician to cashier, it looks something like this. And here you can see what these people make, again, on average across the country. If I then take that list and cut it in half, say about there, hopefully you can see right away what the upper half has that the lower half lacks, right? You should know right away it's an education. You actually have to have a degree in medicine to be a physician, right? I mean, I found that out the hard way. You have to have gone to law school and passed the bar to be a lawyer. You don't need any really special education to be a janitor or a hairdresser, particularly, maybe some training, but you don't need a degree. And so for most of us, our education is going to equal our earning power, right? There's a direct correlation here. If you look at the numbers, there's about 11% of the people in our country that don't have a high school diploma. They only make on average about $29,000 a year. And that means 89% of us have a high school diploma, but if that's where you stop, then you're in the 29% that only have a high school diploma. And you can see they make quite a bit more money than someone without a diploma, but it's still not a lot of money. And what you'll see is as you continue to go up the ladder here, the more education you have, #1, the less people have that, right? It's fewer people that actually have that education, and you make more money. So people who have at least a bachelor's degree, but anyone who's graduated from college, they make up about 32% of our country. If you decide to only have a bachelor's degree, then you're in the 21% of the country that have that, and obviously you're going to make more money. If you continue your education and get a master's degree, again, it becomes pretty narrow up here. Only 9% of the people in the country have a master's, and only less than 2% have a doctorate, and only about 1.3% have a professional degree. Professional degree being what's called a terminal degree. So this is doctors, dentists, and lawyers for the most part. They're at the top of the food chain. So again, education equals earning power. The more education you have, the better. The other part that a lot of people don't know is the more employable you become. So if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, right now the unemployment level is relatively low for those people. Now this hasn't been updated since the coronavirus, but you can just see, even in a time when there was full employment, the only people who were really suffering here were people who did not have a high school diploma, or possibly a few people who did have a high school diploma, but no other degree. People who have an advanced degree, certainly someone who has a bachelor's degree, none of these people were really suffering until maybe very, very recently. But for the most part, when we have a recession like we're in right now, the number one, the very first group that gets laid off are those who are less educated. The very last group to get hired when times are good, again, are the ones who are the less educated. So not only do you get more money by staying in college and finishing your degree, you also protect yourself from job and wage loss during difficult times. The federal government tells us that having a bachelor's degree increases your earning power by over 1.3 million compared to someone who has a high school diploma. So there's no better investment that you can make than getting your college degree. So let's just take a quick look at a very bad example of a budget, just to give you a rough idea though of what it should look like. So you really should lay out your entire year, right? I'm just showing you 1 month and then the year, the year total. But really you want to plan out every single month. For instance, my wife's birthday is in August. And so in my budget for August, I actually put in a little extra money because I'm going to buy her a gift. We put in extra money in our budget for the end of the year for holiday gifts as well. So something like that where it's not going to be consistent every month. For instance, I only pay my car insurance once a year. So I know when I pay that in February, I have that in my budget. So you really have to be quite specific with this. And obviously the more detail, the easier it is for you to see if you're staying on track. So you can see here, we've laid out an example of someone making $58,000 a year. They've got all of their needs first, right? So rent, food, utilities, and so on. And in this case, their needs run about $34,000. Now, remember, this is take-home pay. So you don't base your budget on your gross income. You have to base it on what you're actually coming home with. So this is after-tax pay that this person's using. So that after you have a difference, and then after you're different, you figure out how much money you have left over, then you can start paying for all of your wants, right? If you have hobbies, or you want to go take care of your, get a haircut, or your buy some clothing, go to the gym, anything like that. Any of your wants can then be included in your budget, but should be tracked. Particularly entertainment should be tracked. So here you go, you have this list, and one of the things you could see is the first line item that I include after difference is a savings account. And in finance, this is a concept we call pay yourself first. So as you're controlling your money, as you're planning for the future and what you're going to spend, one of the things you should definitely put in here is putting away some money for yourself, right? Putting away money for yourself, and do this really early in your budget so that you always have that money going into an account of some type. So what happens if you just save $300 a month? Well, the average person's going to work from the time they're 23 until they're 65. So if you do the math on that, that's 504 months. And if you multiply that by 300, you'll see you'll save $151,200. I'm just going to assume that doesn't really trip anybody's trigger too hard, right? Doesn't seem like a lot of money to retire on, and in fact, it's not. But this is only true if you take the money and put it into a pickle jar and you don't invest it. If instead you take that money and put it into the stock market over a very long period of time, and let's face it, 23 to 65, that's a long period of time. If you put that same amount of money, $300 a month, into the stock market, it will average about 9% over a very long period of time. Was that a question? I'm sorry. No? Okay, sorry. So if you look at this as an average, and some people say it's higher, some people will have it lower, some people can be higher, depends on how aggressive you are in the market. But let's say 9%, instead of 151,000, you would actually end up with about 1.7 million. So this is really how you become a millionaire, folks, is you just save a little bit of money every month and put it into the stock market. Obviously, if you can do more than 300, this number increases. If you can do it even earlier, the money increases, right? And so try to get to a place where you're saving 15% of your income, you'll retire as a multi-millionaire, trust me. So this is this concept called compounding, which really means that you're making money on money you've already made. It just continues to grow. Just to show you the time element here, what happens if you wait 5 years, just 5 years? Instead of 1.7 million, you end up with about 1 million. So this is a huge difference. By waiting just 5 years, it's a huge difference. This is actually a 59% mistake. You would end up with 59% more if you start, when I say this is 23 and not wait those 5 years. You can't ever get back those 5 years. Now there's a bunch of budget apps out there. A couple that I've looked at are Mint and Pocket Guard. Mint, I know I used for a while. It hooks up to your credit cards. It hooks up to your loans. It hooks up to your bank account, hooks up to your debit card. And so it knows, it kind of keeps track of your spending. Because having the budget does you no good unless you're comparing it to the actual money you're spending, right? It's like, hey, I've got a plan for my money. I don't do anything with it, but I've got a plan. I mean, what the hell? That doesn't do any good. You have to go back and look and say, am I on track? Or am I spending too much money on entertainment? Have I already gone through my budget for food? Where am I? And so you've got to keep track of your spending to make sure you're staying on track for your budget. So let's be smart with our money. The Federal Reserve asked people recently how they would cover an emergency of $400. And 33% of the people said they would have to borrow the money. They don't have an extra $400. And then there's another 14% that said, can't have it, can't borrow it, and I don't have it, which is 47% of the people in our country today that can't handle a $400 emergency. So your second thing that you need to do is to have an emergency account set up. In fact, you should do this before you start investing. You want to put away really 6 months of expenses for an emergency. And how much is that? That's where your budget comes in, right? Take a look at your budget, come up with an average monthly expense, and then multiply that by 6. And that's how much money you should put away specifically for an emergency. People who are going to do better right now in this recession, people who've been laid off, and are going to be able to survive and stay where they're living and be able to feed themselves and so on, are the people who took this kind of advice. And they put away money specifically for a time like today so that they can weather this storm. Once we come out of the recession, they'll find another job and they can get back to earning income. But in the meantime, they might be out of work for at least 6 months. This emergency fund would help. Of course, I tell people this, and this is what I hear all the time, right? I can't save money. And you know who tells me that is this person, right? These are always the people who can't save money as they're talking on their $1,000 phone and drinking their $5 Starbucks. Of course we can save money. Everybody can. How are we doing on time? Are we okay?
I think we're good.
Okay, we'll keep going. Sadly, 80% of the world population lives on less than $10 a day. So I always balk at the fact that people tell me they can't find a way to save money, and most people can. So here's one question for you. If you buy a $300 pair of shoes that normally cost $450, how much money have you saved by doing that? So the reason I ask that is because in our society, we are never told to save money. If anything, we're told to spend money, right? And we look at ads constantly. There's 30,000 impressions a day or some ridiculous number like that. And we're told things like spend more, save more, right? I mean, I don't know. Is that really how people think it works? Spend more, save more? How does that How can you do that, right? We're told that this is our last chance, that we only have one day to do this. Oh my God, hurry, hurry, hurry. They always want, put this sense of urgency into their message so that you run out and spend money. But what if I told you that you really can't save money by buying things? In fact, these two words are antonyms. They mean exactly the opposite. If you buy a $300 pair of shoes that normally costs $450, you actually haven't saved any money at all, right? You've spent $300. And that's just all there is to it. Am I telling you not to buy things on sale? No. I'm telling you to be careful with your spending. That's what I'm saying. Look at your spending. You're not actually saving money by spending money, though. And there's no way that you're doing that. So try not to buy things that you can't afford with money that you don't have to impress people that you don't like, right? Instead, be a saver. Start saving. So a couple things to go through real quickly to be smart with our money. One is live within your means. That means living within your budget. Number two, don't use debt to solve a problem. Instead, have your emergency fund set aside so that if you do, or when you do have a problem, you don't have to borrow your way out of the problem. Because if you do that, you're really just replacing one problem with another. So have the money, use it in the emergency, and then replenish that account. Number three, obviously save, I can't say that enough. Try to get to 15% of your income. And then don't borrow money you don't need. And there's only 3 reasons to ever borrow money. It's buy a house, get an education, or start a business. All of these are some form of investment. And so they're the only valid reason to borrow money. If you're borrowing money for any other reason, like buying a car, buying furniture, taking a vacation, these are not investments. These are things that lose value. So never borrow to buy these kind of things. Only borrow to increase your investments, either buying a house or getting an education or starting a business. That's it. Those are the only valid reasons to ever borrow money, in my opinion. Of course, if you do, because nobody ever listens to me, if you do borrow money, then by all means, try to repay that debt as fast as you can. Because no matter what I do or say, at some point, you're going to get a credit card and you're going to go out and do this with your credit card. You're going to have a really fun day. You're going to buy a pair of shoes, get an Xbox, buy some perfume, and have a really good dinner. That dinner kind of grosses me out because I'm a vegan, but just saying, you go out and have a nice dinner. So here you are having this fantastic day. You've spent $700. Wasn't that fun? And you put it on your credit card, and your credit card company charges you about 19% in interest, and they tell you that your minimum monthly payment is $20. At which point you go, holy crap, that's awesome. I should have done this more, sooner. And you write your little $20 check and you send it off to the credit card company. You go, yay, I'm going to do that some more. That was so much fun. And it's so cheap. Of course, what they don't tell you, except in the fine print, is how long will it take you to pay off that $700 if you make nothing but the minimum monthly payment. And this, of course, is true only if you never use the credit card again. Let's just say you stop using the credit card. You make nothing but that minimum monthly payment. In 4 years, you'll have paid off the debt. And you would have paid $336 in interest. So you remember those shoes you bought on sale? No, you didn't. You just paid the credit card company instead of the store, right? You didn't actually save any money if you're basically racking up interest with the credit card company. So again, I caution you on how to spend your money. So here we are with this. This is why I say repay debt as fast as you can. If you had to buy these things, you don't have to, but let's say you did buy these things, don't ever make the minimum monthly payment. Instead, put in as much as you possibly can. So let's say you do $68 a month. At least at that point, you've paid off in a year and you would only spend $72 in interest. Better yet, pay it off at the end of the month and then you won't pay anything in interest, right? But do pay it off as fast as you can and don't overuse your credit card, right? Because once you're in credit card debt, it is almost impossible to get out. The average credit card debt in this country is $9,000. That's down from where it was in 2008 and 2009. In the last recession, the average credit card debt in this country got to over 15,000. So this number's down from that. But let's say you had this debt of 9,000, you had the average credit card debt in this country. You would be required to make a minimum monthly payment of $233 a month. And if that's where it stopped, if you stopped using your credit card and you did nothing but make the minimum monthly payment, you'd be great in 35 years. You'd be out of debt in 35 years. And you would have spent $16,000 in interest. This is how most people live. So again, I ask, those shoes that you thought you got on sale? I don't think so. Plus, if you're spending $233 a month just on your credit card debt, who's becoming a millionaire? Honestly, are you becoming you're supposed to be saving $300 a month. If you can save $300 a month and spend $230 a month on your credit card bill, I would say put those things together and saving, and you'd be a multimillionaire. So try to avoid credit card debt, please. And if you do borrow, repay that debt as fast as you can. So your chance of dying by lightning strike is 1 in 165,000. Do you think about that much? Do you worry about that? Like there's a chance that you're going to die by lightning strike? Even worse, your chance of dying by a vending machine. I don't honestly know how this happens. I don't know how vending machines kill people, but there is, this is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics tells us that the chance of dying by a vending machine is 1 in 112 million. I didn't even make that up. That's a real thing. So why do I show you this? It's because I want you to understand, you don't fear vending machines, right? You don't fear lightning strikes because it's never going to happen. You are never going to die by a vending machine. Why do I show you this? It's because your chance of winning the Powerball lottery is even worse. You have a 1 in 300 million chance. You have a better chance of dying in a fatal car accident on your way to buying a lottery ticket. You have a way better chance of being in a fatal car accident than actually winning the Powerball lottery. You have a better chance of having a vending machine take you out. I'm not even sure how that happens. So don't waste your money on gambling like this. This is ridiculous. Rich people don't buy Powerball lottery tickets. Only poor people, right? This is a waste of money. So you do, though, have a 90% chance of becoming a millionaire if you start early. If you start controlling your spending, controlling your money, understand where your money goes, and putting away something for retirement, you have a 90% chance of becoming a millionaire because it doesn't matter how much you make. It only matters how much you keep. As I said, short program today. Sorry, there's a lot more I could go on to, but you guys said a half an hour, so I'm just trying to keep it short.
No, that was awesome. That was very informative.
It's great. If you guys have any questions, though, feel free to send me an email. Or I could answer some questions now if you have any.
I've heard a lot of advice about investing in the stock market.
Yes.
It sounds great, but for me, it sounds like a very scary idea because there's very little that I really know about it. So how do you even start?
Most people do it through their company. They'll get an opportunity to invest in a 401k. And a 401k is basically a way for the company to take some money out of your paycheck every month. Now they'll match, a lot of companies will match what you put in. So you're basically doubling your money when you start investing in a 401k already. But when you sign up for the 401k plan, they're going to ask you, where do you want to put the money? And that's where people start investing in the stock market because that's what's available. And that's where you should put your money, Is the stock market scary? Not really, not to me. And so if you become more educated and you get more comfortable with the whole concept of investing, then the stock market is actually the smartest way to go because let's look at right now what's happening in the stock market. There's a lot of volatility, right? The market's going way up, it's going way down. It's going through this roller coaster right now, but that won't last. That's only short-lived. But as the market is going down, the market's going down because somebody's trying to get out of the stock market, right? They've got 100 shares of Apple and they're going, oh, I can't take it. And they're selling. Well, if more people want to sell than want to buy, the price comes down, right? Supply and demand, the price comes down. So what we've seen is this about a 20% drop in the stock market. So as you see these stocks losing value of 20%, what that means is somebody's selling the stock at a lower price. But if somebody's selling, guess what? Somebody else is buying. Who do you think is buying stocks right now? People who don't understand the stock market? People who are afraid of the stock market? No. People who are comfortable investing. People who understand risk and reward. They're buying now because guess what? Stocks are on sale. They're cheaper now than they've been in 5 years. Hell yeah, buy stock now. It's cheap. Do you really think Apple's going to go out of business in the next couple of years? No. Is Disney going to go out of business?
Oh,
No.
definitely.
They're not. Why not buy their stock now? It's cheap. This event is going to go away at some point. They're going to have a vaccine. We're going to do massive testing. If nothing else, Trump is not going to be the president, please God. And so we're going to end up with a better administration that knows how to protect us, you know, that understands how to actually have a working government that's going to protect us. And so as we go forward, this is eventually going to we're going to be back to a more normal situation where you're going to see this growth in the stock market. And what you'll see, this is exactly what happened in 2008 and 2009. That was the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of our country. The stock market crashed. Many people freaked out, sold their stock when it was at a low point. Well, who bought it? Rich people. So the rich people took money. They basically took all their stock from the middle class and poor people, and then they became, you know, multi-millionaires or added to their wealth. And here's poor people still kind of plugging away, trying to make some money. You can't make money though, except in the stock market, really. That's the only way to do it. Maybe real estate, but that's a whole nother special way of investing that takes time and effort. The stock market is kind of a no-brainer. Honestly, if you buy something now, in 40 years, you're going to go, God, I was brilliant. Look what I did. You know, I took $1,000 and made it 100,000. I'm so smart. You know, but it's a 40-year journey of just constantly buying.
Right.
So don't be afraid. Don't be
Thank
afraid.
you.
I mean, you know, just it's be aggressive. In fact, be aggressive. My daughter is 26. She's got about $38,000, I think, in her 401k plan, right? She's 26 right now. And we were just looking at her investments, and she actually had like 40% of her money in bonds. And I was like, are you out of your mind? And so we shifted that money into stocks when the market was down 30%. Now the market's only down about 22%. So she actually made some money right away. But she shifted money away from bonds, which don't give you as much of a return because they're safer. And we moved that money into stocks. And I'm saying to her, buy them now, because in 40 years, I mean, look, I could show you graph after graph after graph of how successful that program is over a 100-year period of time. It'll be the best thing you'll ever do. You know, I did it when I was your age. I was 58 when I retired. It works. It just flat out works. You know, that and living debt free. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. I can actually do a whole thing on stocks if you ever want to know.
If anyone else has any questions, you could speak, you could chat if you don't want to say anything out loud.
I have a question.
Yes.
For stocks, how do you know where to put your money? Because like there's companies that don't last those 40 years and some do.
Well, and that's a great question. I actually don't buy very many individual stocks, right? to me, there's more risk in that. If I put all of my money into Apple, I would actually be very worried about my investing. But what I do is I buy something called a mutual fund. And actually I buy something called a no load indexed mutual fund. So what I buy, there's a variety of these. You can buy a mutual fund that's made up of every stock on the New York Stock Exchange, for instance. So it's a very broad index, a very broad group of stocks. So you're right, some stocks will go down, other stocks will go up. And what you're trying to do is sort of smooth that out by diversifying your portfolio into many, many, many companies. So you don't really have to be someone who picks an individual company as a winner or loser. I'm lousy at that. I've done a little bit of it, and I'm not very good at that. Instead, I put my money in what's called the S&P 500, which are the 500 biggest companies traded publicly. It's the benchmark that all investments are graded against. So if you sat down with an investment advisor and they started talking about all these investments you could get into, they would want to compare that investment with something, right? So they go, hey, you made 12%. Is that good or bad? I don't know, right? 12%, but compared to what? And so they would always compare it to a benchmark. And the typical benchmark they use is the S&P 500. Well, 30 years ago, I said, why don't I just buy the benchmark? I'm really happy at the benchmark. Let me just do that. And so I started buying S&P 500 index stock. It's very cheap, doesn't cost a lot of money to buy it. You don't have to really have a broker to do it. You can do it through a discount brokerage company, or you can do it through your 401k. And then you can go from there. So once you have enough of that, you might want to diversify into NASDAQ, get the NASDAQ mutual fund, which is an index made up of nothing but NASDAQ stocks, so high-tech stocks. You could buy the Dow Jones Industrial Average as an index. As I said, you could get the entire New York Stock Exchange. You could get international indexes based on the FTSE, or you could go and get China stock, or whatever. But you buy these mutual funds that are basically a pool of stocks that are already diversified, and you could just start adding to your portfolio. But I would start with the S&P 500. And then if you like a particular industry and you want to niche into that, maybe you like transportation stocks. There's an index for that. Maybe you like high-tech stocks. There's an index for that. Maybe you like oil companies. I don't know. There's probably an index for that, energy companies. So whatever you like, you could then add to your portfolio, but I would definitely start, the base that I would lay would be the S&P 500. Those 500 companies, you can look them up. You probably know every single one of them. I mean, it's Coke and Disney and Cisco and Motorola, and it's just these huge companies that we grew up with. So you already know these companies, and it's just an easy way to buy all of their stock at the same time, basically. And the good news is, let's say you wanted to buy a share of Google. I don't know what Google was running, $1,200 a share or something. That's kind of a lot of money to come up with. You can go buy a mutual fund, get into it for $100, right? And somebody just wrote in here, Robinhood, really good place to go. Robinhood, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, all these discount brokerage firms. For $100, you can open up an account. And guess what you can buy? An index that has Google in it, right? Get the S&P 500, you bought Google. At the same time, you bought Apple and Motorola and all these other companies, right? So it's an easy, you don't really have to be that good at figuring out which stock to buy. Just get an index. That's what I would do. Let's see. Do you have any app sites or play? Yeah, I like Robinhood's good. Schwab is good. TD Ameritrade is good. Any discount brokerage firm that doesn't charge you a lot of money to get in, those would be probably my first choices. I would avoid a full service broker because they're more expensive. Where would we go to get a mutual fund? Really, any of those sources. Just recently, in fact, I wanted to buy more Disney stock. And so, you know, I logged on to TD Ameritrade because I'd never really bought directly from them, and I wanted to try out their website. Oh my God, is it easy? It is the easiest thing in the world. You know, I think I gave them $500 or something and open up an account there, and then you can just boom, you know, just tell them I want to buy this, I want to buy that, and it's done so simple. It's so simple, and that's TD Ameritrade. But Robinhood is the same, and again, Schwab is another good one. That's a discount brokerage firm. I'm kind of forgetting some off the top of my head, but those are really good places to go, and you can just buy them. Now, for most of you, when you get out of college, you want to sign up right away for your company's 401k plan. It'll be the same thing. You're going to pick where your money goes. You're going to direct your money. My daughter was self-directing her money into what was called, what the hell, they had a name for it. But it's a retirement fund based on when you're going to retire. So she had a date of 2062, I think. 2062. I know it seems like a long way off, but you know, she's young. So she's thinking she'll retire at about that year. And so she just picks that as the fund. And then that fund, this is what we found out was wrong. That fund then decides how much goes in stock, how much goes in bonds, and it sort of picks for you where you're going to go. And in this case, I didn't like the mix because it had too much in bonds, and I wanted to be more aggressive, but it was a start, you know, as a start. Otherwise, you can pretty much self-direct where your money goes in your 401k. If your company doesn't have a 401k, then you want to open up an individual retirement account, an IRA, and you can do that, I don't know, $2,500 a year or something like that you can put away. So again, it's just a little bit of money every month that you throw into your retirement account, and then sit back and wait, because it's going to seem very slow. You're going to go back and look at your account after the first year. You're going to go, that's like $3,000, big deal. And then you're going to go back the second year and go, okay, so what? I have $7,000. Who cares? What's bad is you start getting into maybe 10,000. You go, well, I've got 10,000 in my retirement account, but I want to go buy a house. You can't touch your retirement account for that. That's a whole separate thing you're going to save up for. So don't blow it on that. Instead, just keep saving for your retirement, because eventually it'll hit 100,000. And then it starts becoming this big snowball that just I mean, think about it. 9% on 100,000 is more money than you will have invested in the entire first year that you started. You'll actually make more in interest on that than what you put away your very first year. And so this becomes this whole thing to a point where really when you get into your 40s or 50s, I'm not even sure if you have to keep saving. You've put away so much that that's just going to start generating its own momentum. Let's see, Roth IRA. I've heard, but don't know much about it. So there's two different kinds of, and you can do this with your 401k as well. A traditional IRA, a traditional 401k plan, means that you're saving money after you've paid taxes, or excuse me, before you've paid taxes on that money. So let's just use round numbers here and say you're making $10,000 a year. If you took $2,000 and put it into a Roth, or excuse me, into a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k, then you don't have to pay taxes on $10,000 because you're sheltering two. So you would only pay taxes today on $8,000, and you'd actually be putting $2,000 away for your retirement, which is great because you save money right now on your taxes. You know, you're not paying as much in your taxes this year. You do the same next year, you don't pay as much money in that year. Now you come to the point where you're retired, you start pulling money out of your retirement account. As you pull it out, the money is taxable. So at that point, you then declare it as income, and you have to tell the government that you've taken money out of your retirement account and you pay taxes on it. So that's all a traditional IRA, traditional 401k. The option to that is a Roth IRA or Roth 401k. With a Roth IRA or 401k, you actually invest after tax. So you go ahead and show the government today that you've made $10,000, You pay taxes on the $10,000, and then you take $2,000 and put it into your retirement account. So you're doing it with after-tax money. You're investing with after-tax money. Doesn't help you today. There's no help today. You're paying, obviously you're declaring all of your income. So there's no tax advantage today. The difference is when you retire and you start pulling the money out, it's tax-free, including all of the money that investment made. So if you put away $2,000 today, that might be $10,000, might have grown to $10,000 by the time you're ready to retire. All of that is tax-free. So when you're retired, you're pulling money out, you aren't paying anything in taxes. So the question is, am I going to pay more in taxes? Is my taxes going to be higher when I'm retired or now? Do I want the benefit now or do I want it later? And you don't really have to make that decision 100% one way or another. If you're not sure, you can put 30% into a Roth IRA. You can put 50% into a Roth and 50% into a traditional. So you get some benefit today and then, benefit when you're retired. You can split it up, that's fine. But that's basically the difference is, do I pay taxes now or do I pay them later? I hope that helped.
Does anybody else have anything that they want to ask?
I'm wearing my alumni shirt.
I like your background as well.
Yeah, I have others. I don't know. I was kind of freaking my class out because I was doing this one. You know that reference? Does anybody know this? I was sort of sticking with my Harry Potter house. But anyway. Anybody else? Let's see. What do you recommend we can do during quarantine to prepare after the quarantine is done? Same thing that I would tell you sort of for everything is pay off debt as fast as you can. Right now is really, it's funny because we're seeing like the best air quality in the history of Los Angeles. India has had the best air quality they've had in 25 years. It's why? Well, people have stopped driving. And so they're saving more money. They have this ability to save more money. So, we're not going out to dinner. We're not going out to the movies. We're not going to concerts. Not that I did that anyway, but I'm just saying, they're not going out dancing that I do. No. And so, you're saving all this money and hopefully it gives you, if nothing else, it should give you an opportunity to try to play with a budget, right? If you've never done it before, you got nothing else to do, play with a budget, look up how to do a budget. There's only about 300 websites that'll show you how to do that. Sign up for Pocket Guard or Mint, sign up for one of those websites to help you develop a budget. And then track your spending. Now's a great time to get into that habit because you're not going to be doing much of it anyway. And then figure out your budget, come back and look at the end of the month, where did I spend money and was I on track in my budget? I called up my daughter the other day. This is before coronavirus hit. She's a nurse, by the way, so I scare the crap out of me. She's a nurse at San Antonio Hospital. I worry about her all the time. Being around COVID patients. But anyway, a couple months back, I called her up and I said, I thought you were going to go out with some friends. And she goes, well, I was going to, but then I looked at my budget and I've already spent my entertainment dollars for this month. And I was just like, that girl, that's how you're supposed to do it, right? And so I would just say, as long as you're sitting around, I would definitely look at budgeting. I would, do some investigation into that. And then just, start with that. If you could get that far by the time this is over, I think you'd probably be in pretty good shape. At least you have control over your money at that point.
Awesome, thank you. If everyone.
Thank you. Thanks everybody, appreciate it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, let me know if you need anything else and be happy to help. Thanks for setting it up.
it seems like a lot of students would love to know more about the stock market as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
maybe working on developing a little workshop sometime.
You bet.
I think that'd be
Be
great.
happy to do it.
If that's
Very
all the
nice.
questions that
Thank you.
everyone has. I'm sorry, continue.
I was saying this was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Always.
If we work on any type of workshop, we'll be posting things on Instagram, on our social medias. We have a Facebook as well. So we will keep you guys updated. We are going to have more Adulting 101 workshops. Our next one is next Thursday, I believe. That one's going to be about legal advice about your first lease. So look out for that on Instagram as well. This is not our last workshop. I'm really glad so many of you showed up. I had fun. I learned a lot.
I can also tell you how to, speaking of leases, I can tell you how to buy a car. I have a workshop on how to buy a car, by the way.
Let's do that too.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
That was awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Yep.